Напускането и намирането са две страни на една и съща история. Пътешествието ми е едновременно загуба и откритие. Намерих се тук, за да остана там. Споделете пътя на писателя-мигрант на столица литература, писане за имиграцията, на 12, 17, 18 и 19 юни. Повече за събитието научете на ekf.bg.
Hi, thank you for being here. Maybe you are here for different reasons. Maybe you're just having your afternoon coffee, but I hope we can contribute to your afternoon. I'm Elizabet, Elizabet Kostova Foundation, and this is actually the opening of the Capital Literature Program for Elizabet Kostova Foundation, following up our Suzopo fiction seminars. And here I'm with 10 fellows coming from Bulgaria and elsewhere in the world. We'll mostly speak English and maybe from time to time in Bulgarian. I would like to thank our host, Perото, and the GA, of course, and our supporters, the US Embassy, Sofia Municipality, Goethe Institute, the Irish Embassy, and also our amazing Kvaba and Robo creative partners who have created this animated version of our flyer and also the video. Responding to the topic of this year's edition, writing about immigration. The idea of tonight's event is to introduce people who have chosen writing, either for their career or just as way of life. I will ask each writer to briefly introduce themselves and answer the question, how did they get to this miracle writing, or when they choose and how they choose writing as a profession. I will start alphabetically. It's probably the most democratic, and I will start with Ariel Folk, who is our guest from Norway, born but living in the United States. So if you'd like to say a few words, introduce yourself and answer the question, how did you choose writing? Or when did you start to write?
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me. Yes, Malena mentioned I was born in Norway, but I now live in the United States, and I write in English, and I've always written in English, I think part of becoming a writer was discovering Anglophone literature and sort of the English language as a child, and becoming very enchanted with literature, and deciding as I suppose a quite young child, maybe 11, that I wanted to be in that world and to be one of these people who brought so much joy to my world.
You've been reading mostly work originally written in English. I guess you are fluent in Norway. Can you tell us a little bit, how do you navigate between two language cultures, and do you write in Norwegian as well?
I don't at all write in Norwegian, and I don't consider myself, I'm not sure that I can fully consider myself a Norwegian writer. I would say I'm more some kind of strange type of American writer, which perhaps is sounds a bit strange, but I recently started translating from Norwegian to English, and so I'm now becoming more acquainted with Norwegian literature again, in the way that I only that I most recently was as a child, and so it's been very interesting to sort of get back into that, but I think I'm not a Norwegian writer, I would say.
Thank you. Now we'll move to Albena Shkodrova, who also navigates between two languages, Bulgarian and English. Maybe you know her as a journalist, but now she's also going into the field of fiction and working on her novel. So can you briefly introduce yourself and answer the same question about how did you get to writing?
Yeah, my name is Albena Shkodrova, and indeed I was mainly a journalist for most of my life. And I suppose I would never have started writing fiction in first place because if I didn't have a story to tell. So it is not kind of a purpose as such. It is more like I really want to tell something, and this is when I start writing. And part of what I had to tell so far has been non-fiction. It has been history of our everyday life mostly. This is what I work on. Probably you might have read my book Communist Gourmet, Soc Gourmet in Bulgarian, which is history of food under communism. So this was part of part of my, I don't know, themes that I'm interested in. And currently I'm working on a novel. I decided to do so because there is actually a theme that preoccupies me for many years now. And there is this, I have an idea that I want to follow, and somehow it happened that my private life pushes me also to follow this idea because it develops it. The more I live and whatever happens to me, which is to move from one place to another, the more I want to write that novel because it is really, the main character is, I kind of start imagining the main character more and more, and this is the reason I'm so driven, I guess, to write about her. Well, that's my motivation, I guess, shortly.
Thank you. Yes, that's a good point. Motivation actually helps me turn to Alexander, who has a PhD in contemporary Bulgarian literature. It seems like that you were actually writing and you were published a writer before you moved to studying creative writing at Sofia University. Why so?
It's not actually true. My first book is published after I finished my master's in creative writing in Sofia University, and then I made my PhD. But the motivation was in general. But you're on point that I'm a little bit of mixed bag of love for literature. In general, everything started for me with the love for literature. I started to study Bulgarian philology because this is the course as it gets in Bulgaria to learn literature in general. And then I had to choose the let's say to be a scientist in literature or to be an author, to be a writer. So I decided to choose the second one, the part of the writer. And then I made a PhD in Bulgarian literature, knowing that I will not be a scientist in Bulgarian literature, but I wanted to learn it more deeper and deeper. So hopefully it helps me write better. So this is the situation here.
It actually reminds me, I think one of the discussions yesterday was about creative writing programs and how they're somehow hanging if there is no literature as a foundation. And when did you start writing?
I'm not sure exactly, but let's say 7-8 years ago. But when I did my PhD, it was about 4 years that I write only non-fiction. I was writing only non-fiction on my PhD. So, yeah.
Thank you. And now I will pass the mic to Ioana Elmi, who is actually fluent in English and French. In addition to, she's Bulgarian, but she studies now in the New Sorbonne in France. And she was born on that very date. I don't know how many years ago. So happy birthday.
I specifically asked them not to do this. Yeah, the question was why writing, right?
Yes.
I mean, because we were supposed to talk to young people today, even though, there's no age to start writing and there's no age to not, start it, but it might seem that you're supposed to have a single purpose and know that you want to write. I didn't know that I wanted to write. I didn't have a single purpose. I didn't wake up one day with the sun shining through the window and said, yes, I'm going to be a writer. And I think what makes you an actual writer happens in the long term. I think time can only tell if you're a good writer. Time can only tell if you're a writer. So I'd like to urge anyone who's looking at us and is like, oh my God, look at these people, they're determined writers and they know everybody can be anything they want and be unsure about it. But for me, that uncertainty kind of cleared when I found out that I write because I can't do anything else. Literally, I'm not that I'm an excellent writer, but I'm not as good in anything else, and I don't want to be as good in anything else. So it's a pretty simple answer. There's nothing too deep for it. It's just as anything else is what you want to do. If that's what you want to do, that's what you become.
It's not necessary to be too deep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, you can give it to Karen Auto, who is our guest from US, Washington, D.C., and she holds MFA from Michigan University. She's working now on a novel, and yes, I would like to turn to you with the same question.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Uten, and I think I've always been a writer. I come from a family of storytellers, so it was really important in a really large family. Everybody had sort of one defining story, and whenever we had family gatherings, my memory is of all of us sitting around and sort of going through the list of stories, and you knew when they were getting to yours, when it was about to be embellished, and you'd say, wait a minute, it didn't happen that way, it wasn't that bad. But storytelling was so valuable in my family, and I think that I wanted to be a good storyteller, so I made up elaborate stories for my Barbie dolls and my paper dolls. They all had names, they all had histories, they all had motivations. No, this one is not with this one right now, there's a story. And then I started writing them down by the time I was, 7 or 8 years old. And, throughout my life, it's the one real constant thing. It's the one thing that has always made me happy, even when it's making me miserable, because it's not doing exactly what I wanted to do. So that's my story.
It seems like you didn't need a creative MFA program whatsoever to ignite the engine of you. So how come you actually enrolled in? This is one of the best creative writing programs actually in the United States. And you were awarded the Hopworth Award, which is also very acclaimed. So maybe you can tell a little bit about that.
Well, it's interesting. When I left undergraduate school, I remember talking to a creative writing professor I had about what do I do now, and he said, well, there's this thing called the MFA, and I enrolled immediately, and I wasn't ready, I think, because I didn't know what I wanted to work on. So when I finally went to an MFA program, it was because I knew I needed the camaraderie, because you make amazing friends who are writers, and one of the things that you need as a writer is community. So even when after you graduate, like after we leave here, we can all keep in touch. We know that we can count on each other and say, I'm working on something, I need another set of eyes, can you help me with this? And you have that connection, and that's really important because the work is so solitary. So you get that, you get a network, and you do learn how to be better at what you're doing.
Karen, but pardon, this time MFA from GIOVO Writers Program, another amazing program. So can you also tell a bit about yourself and how and when and why did you couple with writing?
So I was always very enchanted with books. I liked to read them and to hold them, and I would stay up very late reading as a young child, and my parents would yell at me down the hallway to turn off my light when I was reading. So I was very enchanted and obsessed with books, and when I was very small, like 7, I wanted to write one myself, so I wrote and illustrated a little story about a boy cat who falls in love with a girl cat, but she doesn't want to date him and he has to convince her, and the title of the story was Don't Bother Me. And I stapled it together so it would look like a book, and I kept just wanting to make them. So yeah, I liked to make stories early on, and just kept doing it and was very lucky to have a family that was very affirmative and supportive of that, because I know a lot of people don't have that. So that was that helped to motivate me. But I did like and appreciate what Joanna said about, that I think it can feel like, oh, if I didn't always know and have this singular purpose and know I wanted to be a writer, you would maybe feel like a fake or something, but that narrative doesn't happen all the time, and you can choose it at any time. But yeah, I think the thing that made me fall so deeply in love with it early on was the fact that I just liked books and I liked holding them, and I was like, I want to do that too. Yeah.
So we are in the right environment for you. Maria Makedonska.
Oh, finally.
Hi, I'm Maria and I'm addicted to writing for more than 20 years. Thank you for being here. So, my reason to write is not very different from the others, but I don't know, I have so many ideas in my head that I have to write them down because I'm gonna explode in other way. And this is the way just to share myself with the others. I'm always in my writings. Please, I don't want to speak very long because I'm very shy. That's it.
Okay, maybe what about Maria Riva?
Hello. Thank you for having us here. So what brought me to writing, I came to it through journaling first. I think I was always aware that I have a really bad memory. I forget things very easily, so I always had this compulsion to write things down so that I could read them later. And about 7 years ago, I made the leap over to fiction, I think in some ways for similar reasons, to kind of preserve memory. And in my case right now, it's kind of my family's memory I'm trying to preserve. So my parents have told me a lot of stories about what it was like to grow up in the Soviet Union, in Ukraine, and I have my own memories from that. So I'm trying to preserve that through fiction in a way.
Why fiction? Why fiction?
I think with fiction, in a way you can get closer to a certain truth. You can incorporate different kinds of research you do in interesting and novel ways, maybe. Yeah.
Thank you. Melissa? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You also have an interesting cross-cultural experience.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for being here. I first started writing stories when I moved to England at age 8, so I was initially born in Holland, and I guess reading and literature was a way for me to learn the English language, and so it's that's the way I learned the language, and that stuck with me, I guess. I wrote stories throughout school. I did a little bit of playwriting for a while, but I didn't commit to writing fiction until maybe 3 years ago. So it wasn't necessarily that I always thought I wanted to be a writer. It kind of just became a path that I took later in life, similar to. I'm getting really embarrassed. I'm sorry. I hate speaking in front of people. Yeah, it's not like I feel like I've had a calling for my entire life, and so I feel like it's never too late to start writing if that's what you're interested in.
And you manifested that you are confident with your language.
Say again?
You are confident with your language.
Yes, yeah.
Joking, of course.
Thank you. I'm more confident writing than I am speaking. You're absolutely right. No, it's very true. It's very, very true.
Stanislava is our last fellow, going alphabetically. She comes from a different path of life, so to say. She graduated in mathematics and informatics, but I know her only as a writer, so maybe you can tell about how did you arrive at writing.
Здравейте, добър вечер на всички. Всъщност и аз като двете Каран идвам от семейство, където много се чете, включително баща ми е писател, майка ми също има литературни опити. И аз също като останалите участници съм започнала да пиша от дете, но в един момент живота ми тръгна в съвсем различна посока. Напоследък обаче имам някакви идеи и започнах пак да пиша и историите сами идват при мен. И се опитвам да ги следвам.
In brief, she said that like the two Karens, she also was raised in a very reading and supporting environment, and then she doesn't know exactly what happened, but she found writing as a thing, and the stories normally the stories find her. I really want to turn it to the audience. If you have any questions, any urgent questions. If you don't have any urgent questions, I will create some space for you to come up with such. We have a little bit more time, and I will ask one more question actually to whoever wants to answer. What do you do for a living as writers? Maybe I know some people actually write, teach, and it's different story here, it's different story in the US or in the UK. So maybe it will be interesting if everybody actually says, so we're maybe counter-clockwise this time. Stanislava, какво всъщност правиш?
Ами всъщност не си изкарвам парите с писане. Изкарвам си парите като demand planner в една голяма фирма. Планирам производството и заводи да произвежда това, което аз им кажа. Но писането си е хоби. Няма да спра да пиша, дори мисля да започна да пиша по-сериозно, без да се отказвам от основната си професия.
For her, writing is a hobby, and she earns her living as a production planner in a company, but she intends to invest more in writing.
I work in Bulgarian National Radio, the radio drama department. I'm editor there, and my goal is to be as close as possible to literature in life as I can. And in Bulgaria, it's not very easy. It's nearly impossible to support yourself only writing fiction. So I think all in Bulgaria must find a suitable job, and it's okay.
Yeah, in the United States, it's also very hard to make a living as a writer. The money you might make selling a book or selling articles is not usually enough to support yourself. So every writer I know has a day job, And many of the writers I know got their grad school degree in writing, and that's often treated as a degree that you use to become a teacher, for better or for worse. So many writers, including myself, teach. I teach college writing classes to undergraduates at the university level. And that's nice because it's not a typical office job. It changes a little bit. So even though I work full-time, my schedule allows for these pockets of time throughout the day that I will use to get writing done. Yeah.
My job is copywriter, and it still contains the word writer, and I'm using some words, so I'm happy for now.
Right now I'm a fellow at the University of Michigan, so I'm very lucky that I get to spend my time writing, and then next year we'll see, hopefully some kind of remunerative occupation. So yeah, we'll see.
So I used to fund my writing through construction work. So it was part-time. I worked with paint that had lead in it. So I'd have to wear like this hazmat suit with a respirator, but it paid well enough per hour that I didn't have to do it full-time. So the other hours I could devote to writing. And after that, I did a master's in fine arts, which was fully funded, so that gave me the time to write. And I took the last year just to focus on writing, and I have to figure out what comes next in terms of writing.
Yeah, similar to Maria, I'm also currently on a fully funded MA, and so that's given me the time and the space to write for a year. But previous to starting the MA, I was working part-time in various kind of arts administration jobs, front of house in an art gallery, arts administration in theatre, kind of just to give myself the time to write, which is the important thing. And I'll hopefully find a similar part-time job alongside carrying on my writing, and a part-time job that doesn't take too much mental energy. I think that's the main thing for me.
I taught for a while on the university level, and now I work in communications for a law school in the U.S. So I'm working at the university level, but I'm doing publications and editing and writing, that sort of thing.
Well, I've been earning my living mostly with writing, but as a journalist, as a non-fiction writer. And I moved to Belgium. I forgot to mention that actually like 9 years ago, which for a while I was able to continue writing. I kept my job in Bulgaria, so I was able to earn some living, which is, of course, wasn't very, it was in Bulgarian standards, so it was quite all right for Bulgaria, but for Belgium it wasn't a significant income. So I decided to shift somehow even more, because it was difficult to do journalistic jobs in Belgium for Bulgaria, and language-wise, of course, to write in Dutch or in French would have, I'm just not capable still, I don't speak the languages that good to do that. So I tried all kinds of things, actually, all kinds of things. I did film production for a little while, which I discovered earns very good money, but is very stressful. And then I decided to try to combine academic jobs, and I actually pursued a doctorate, thinking naively that I will be able to get afterwards an academic job that I would use. My reasoning was if I have an academic job in a field which is kind of close to my interests, maybe there's going to be a synergy. I'm not going to be wasting my time on just earning money apart and then going home and writing. However, the more I'm kind of struggling, I do have kind of an academic job now, kind of part-time. But if I indeed, I realized if I really am lucky or maybe unlucky to get one full-time academic job, I won't be able actually to write. It has changed. My ideas were just not, I don't know, not correct about how academic life looks like. It doesn't seem that if you work as a historian in a university, you actually have any time to write anything but academic research. So now I'm really like facing a choice, or to pursue academic career and then really like have very little time left to hope to still somehow bring things together, or I have to count on my husband, which I don't know. I'm really not. I don't know. This is where I am. I don't know what.
Thank you. So I'm actually doing what Albena gave up doing. So I live in Paris, where half my time is going to school at the Sorbonne, where I have to take care that I do what I need to do. And the other time I'm doing journalism, online journalism in Bulgaria. I recently joined Deutsche Welle as a journalist, as a part of their team. And I also work for, unfortunately, one of the few truly independent medias left in the country, which is supported entirely by its readers, by the name of Toast. You can find it, yes. Thank you for reading us and supporting us. But I've done all sorts of odd jobs, like I've waited tables, I've cleaned houses, I've walked dogs. So there's no, when you're trying to write, and sometimes you end up in these really odd situations, they can actually give you characters for your books. So don't think that, just because right now I'm in this kind of hole financially, or, I can't find a job. There's no writing in that. There's actually a lot of writing in there. For example, I was in the States for 2 years where I did most of the odd jobs. And because we're talking about writing about immigration, I got to meet a lot of the Latino, like Mexican immigrants that are being vilified on television, and to hear their stories and to see them as people. And these stories are, they're waiting to be told. So every job, even if it seems unrelated to writing, can be an opportunity to write even more. Yeah, just wanted to mention that.
Thank you so much, everyone. Are there any questions?
Please, who is your favorite author? The favorite author or authors?
I cannot answer that question. It's impossible. I'm sorry. I can't.
Too many.
Yeah.
Too many. Too much to choose.
Yeah.
To choose one, for me it's impossible to.
Bulgarian or foreign? Bulgarian or foreign? Bulgarian. Konstantinov, I guess. And still no.
This is hard, because I want to name like 12. But probably an American author, Joy Williams, I think is my favorite author.
I think it should be Boris Vian and Dubravko Gresic.
If I can only have one, I'll go all in for Tolstoy.
Miriam Taves, she's a Canadian author.
A second vote for Kurt Vonnegut, actually, is my favourite writer.
A third vote for him.
Yeah, right, we spoke about this earlier. Also, Grace Paley, who's a short fiction writer. I love her a lot.
I don't think I can answer that either. Usually my favorite writer is whoever's last book I've loved. So the last book that I that absolutely blew me away was Sigrid Nunez's The Friend. So right now she's my favorite writer.
It is indeed a question which is impossible to answer because favorite in which genre and for what. I don't know, I could name somebody I've been recently thinking of about, and this is Pirandello.
Well, actually, I can't name a favorite author, but I can tell you who's the last author I read that really touched me, and it's Alexander Putimsky, who's a Bulgarian poet. He died in the 1940s, unfortunately, and he's the first Bulgarian poet who approached taboo issues such as homosexuality, which is because June is this month in which we talk about this kind of topic. So I really would recommend to any Bulgarian speakers in the room to grab a copy of his essays, Непознатият. It's really something worth reading. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Maybe we have time for one.
Okay, not that I consider myself a writer, but when I write, I'm a writer. But I'm also in that kind of a crossroad business of writing. And it really comes with to see that we're all riding the same shit train. I had like my first creative writing teacher. He told me like, if you want to be a writer, but you gotta like support yourself, be anything else but a creative writing teacher. Better be a plumber, because it takes so much from your creativity. And I was just wondering about, because some of you are copywriters and creative writing teachers, do you kind of feel the same way?
Okay. So yeah, I do teach writing. I mean, I think that's a good. It's a very good question to ask because, in my experience, so many writers are funneled into teaching professions, and that's sort of taken as a given. And it's really good to ask questions about the impact that has on your writing life and your career and your ability to do the thing that you love. I guess in my experience, I work as an adjunct in the States, which means I'm basically a temporary contract worker. Every semester, I'll get a couple classes, but there's no telling if I will be able to continue working there the next semester. And that financial instability is a little bit scary and difficult, but it means that I have a lot more time to work on my writing, and I have found that people I know who are full-time teachers really struggle to be able to work and write. And I know a couple teachers who say they wrote more when they waited tables. So I don't know what to really do with that information, or I have no advice to give based on that. But I do think they can be very challenging to balance, and I think it is good to ask questions about the kind of life you want to live to make money and how much space it takes. That they're really hard questions. Teachers.
I just want to add, I think we spoke about that with somebody, I think it was Alexander, one morning, that people will always, and you yourself, because you have that habit, you want to put yourself in a box. You have to say, you will want to say, I'm a writer, or I'm a journalist, or I'm an engineer. But you don't have to. At any point in time, you can be anything, and you can still fulfill yourself in the way you want to. In our literature, there's a lot of examples like that. Georgi Markov was an engineer. He wasn't in any creative kind of thing, right? And there's anything really. I just wanted to add that.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I've done both things, and I see the advantages and disadvantages. If you're lucky, and I was lucky because I was at Michigan, which was a place that had a union for teachers, so I knew I was going to be guaranteed work throughout the whole year, but I was still going to have to reapply for my job in the next year, that sort of thing. That can get stressful and that can get old. You can certainly get a tenure track job eventually if the gods are aligned and you've paid off whoever you need to for that to happen. The good thing about teaching is that you are constantly in contact with the thing that you love. And that's one thing I miss now because I'm not teaching. I'm working in communications. I'm writing marketing and admissions material for law school. So during the day, there's never a time like I used to have when I was teaching, when I realized I had just spent an hour reading James Baldwin, and I was getting paid for it. And I could look up and think, wow. And there was somebody next door I could talk to about that because there was a colleague. So you're not in it in the same way. But it is true when you're teaching and in the thick of it, you may not be doing your own writing until the summer or until a break and that sort of thing. So, there are trade-offs for either one, and you may just be somebody who has to figure out which one will work with me and work for me and try them both out.
Well, thank you, everyone. Now that you know a little bit about our writers, I'm sure maybe you are curious to hear their work. And tomorrow at 9 p.m. in this same venue, you'll be able to hear each writer's reading in her mother tongue, and we will also have projections in the other language in translation, so you get to experience all writers in both languages, Bulgarian and English. So tomorrow, 9 p.m. here, and we have programs around, I hope, with more events which are part of Capital Literature. And now we will have 5 minutes break, and we continue with a presentation of the creative writing program at the University of East Anglia in UK by its director Andrew Cohen, who is here with us this year.